Welcome back to Forecast Lab. We have shifted into September. Our focus right now is on the tropics. And right now is a significant time because the first week of September usually brings the highest sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic. The second week, on average, has the peak tropical cyclone activity in the Atlantic. And we look down south off the coast of Mexico, off the west coast there. That is Tropical Storm Lorena. Normally, I don't pay too much attention to that area because most of the systems are heading west, such as Hurricane Kiko here. That's not really going to affect anybody, but Lorena is a different situation. Let's take a look at that forecast graphic there. That is going to be a Category 1 hurricane, recurve into Baja California as a tropical storm, and then move inland around Hermosillo, south of Arizona, and it will bring an extensive moisture field into the desert southwest and into West Texas. In the next few weeks, we're going to start discontinuing these monsoon graphics because this is a July, August, September type of chart, and things become increasingly under the influence of the prevailing westerlies. But we can use this chart to track the approach of Hurricane Lorena from the south. This is the GFS model. There's the circulation right there, just west of, I don't think I remember all of the cities in Baja California, but anyway, this is going to cross into the northern part of Baja California Sur and then approach the Guaymas, Hermosillo area. A lot of the moisture and convection preceding the storm, reaching El Paso, Deming, Truth or Consequences, and crossing over around Friday or Saturday into West Texas. So by Saturday, the bulk of it will be moving into Texas and Oklahoma. That will be accompanied by a strong increase in the southerly flow and some interaction with a frontal system across that area. These black lines, those are the 700 millibar heights up at about 10,000 feet. And gradually everything will shift eastward Monday and Tuesday, and it will have effects all through the Mississippi and Ohio rivers and into the eastern U.S. Also, some concerns in the Atlantic with the Cape Verde storm track becoming active. You can check out the development with the GFS model here. There's the Cape Verde Islands. There's our area of concern. The GFS is probably one of our more reliable models for the medium range, and you can see this system coming together very quickly over the weekend, but it's moving rather slow, only about 10 knots to the west. Current projection has taken that north of the Leeward Islands, north of Puerto Rico, and in fact, this was kind of a surprise, but the past few cycles have been recurving this rapidly. If you look at Bermuda, it is very hard to find. Let me back this up. Right there. That's Bermuda. The GFS taking that east of Bermuda. The ECMWF is showing consistency very close to the GFS solution and taking that right over Bermuda. So right now it looks like most of the threats are for Bermuda. Nothing for the East Coast at this time, but this is over a week out, and these models do not do all that well beyond 7 days. So we really need to kind of put that aside and look at this again in about 3 days. The current surface chart does have some very interesting developments up north. Take a look up there, North Dakota, Manitoba, Saskatchewan. That's a big chunk of cold air coming out of central Canada. Temperatures in the 40s and 50s all the way up into the prairies. And that's very gusty, cold air with cold air advection, cumuliform type showers, and that is spreading all into North Dakota and northern Minnesota. Now, unfortunately, this is not going to come very far south. Most of the effects will be in the northern plains and the Great Lakes area. But there will be some minor benefits from that. At least we're going to get some drier air working its way south, maybe some cool nights and some mild days. But it's too early to get those 50s and 60s way down south. We do have a frontal boundary from a previous front, which has gradually sunk south over the past 4 days, and that's brought slightly cooler air. You can see the northerly flow right there. Dew points a little bit suppressed down in the 60s. Typically, when we're in that really beefy tropical moisture. Those dew points are around 75, right around 72, 75, and it feels quite humid. The monsoon is in full force, affecting even California this afternoon. There are flood watches all through the northern Mojave Desert into the Sierras, up to Mono Lake and into parts of Nevada this afternoon. And a cutoff low off of the Pacific Northwest coast. Cooler air offshore, very deep, cold air. However, very little of that working its way onshore. In fact, we've got temperatures well into the 90s through much of Washington, Oregon, and British Columbia. A quick look at the upper air 500 millibars, and you may ask, why do we need to see this? I mean, it's very complicated. It's in the upper air. We don't actually experience this. But there's a lot to be gained from this chart. This is kind of the playbook of what's happening. This kind of controls what's happening at the surface. And you don't have to make it too complicated. You just kind of look at the key details here. We see this big river of northwest flow into the central and eastern U.S. That means a tendency to bring cold air down from Canada. That's indeed what's happening here. You see that low right there aloft. That's bound up with that cold air. That's there due to the cold advection, and it's a sign of the cold air mass moving south. Have a cutoff low off of the southeast Alaska coast. We do have a heat advisory for tomorrow in southeastern Alaska. They're expecting temperatures up near 80 degrees. And further south, look at that right there. A double-barreled cutoff low system. That's south of a cutoff high, which means Rex block. That is a blocking pattern, and that tends to keep the large-scale details that you see right here. Those kind of keep them locked into place. So without any forecast charts, I would be inclined to think that the overall pattern is not going to change very much over the next week. And with that, if you kind of ignore this right there, you'll see that there is ridging where the lines bend northward. That means a lot of warm air in place, especially along the west coast right there. And that is going to be the story over the next week, a tendency towards very warm conditions. Now, another very useful chart this time of year is precipitable water. This is kind of the total amount of moisture in a vertical column. And this time of year, we have quite a bit of moisture being pumped into the atmosphere. As we mentioned, the sea surface temperatures are near their seasonal max. Evaporation is proportional to the water temperature, and this means that we're going to see quite a bit of moisture on the chart, especially down there in the tropics and in the Gulf of California. And we're seeing these bright purple. Those indicate 2 to 2.5 inch precipitable water, which is quite a bit. Now, we have weaker amounts throughout the eastern and central U.S. That's because of that very persistent northerly flow. It's not quite effective at scouring out all the moisture, but it has taken a toll. And in the southwestern U.S., this is a significant amount of precipitable water. That's the monsoon working on southwestern Arizona into California. Amounts anywhere from 1 to 2 inches of precipitable water. And we see the approach of Lorena from the south there. Right around Friday or Saturday, that's where a lot of the moisture crosses the Mexican plateau and emerges into Texas. And that combines with enhanced southerly flow, and those precipitable water amounts really come up 1.5 to 2.5 inches. So it's going to be a wet weekend throughout the southern plains. And gradually things shift eastward Monday and Tuesday into the Mississippi River region and into the eastern U.S. for Tuesday and Wednesday. And this may couple with some waves embedded in the prevailing westerlies or baroclinic weather systems, fronts, and that kind of thing. So we'll scope all that out on the forecast charts. Looks like a little bit drier air right here. That indicates air originating either from Canada, cooler modified Canadian air, or from the upper levels, which is probably the case out here. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but this will show us what dynamics are at play. There's that northwesterly flow, 500 millibar heights and vorticity here, showing a high pressure area there across Idaho. There's that cutoff low off of the Pacific Northwest, one little weaker one in the Bay Area. And we've got a occlusion up there in Ontario. And just a very quick look over the next few days. And we see, yeah, that's a very potent upper air system. Probably lots of cold core convection across Ontario. Very showery weather. And maybe even some graupel will make it down, depending on what the wet bulb profile is like. There's another wave right there coming in for Thursday into the northern U.S. That appears to be possibly a jet max, maybe something like that. There's the divergent left front quadrant and the divergent right rear quadrant. So those are areas to watch. So around Chicago, Milwaukee, watch out there for Thursday night. And it becomes channeled there for Friday and Saturday. Here comes the remains of Lorena, bumbling across the Rockies and into West Texas and gradually lifting eastward into the Ozarks. And we see that in the western U.S. Strong onshore flow right there. That is a sign of things to come this fall. That's certainly a cool season pattern. If we had a little bit more moisture being tapped, this could be an atmospheric river event. Anyway, we'll check that out on Friday and see where we're at with that. Let's look at the Q vectors. Now, this gives us another look at the dynamics. We're going to see this one upper level low crossing into Ontario, and of course the next system upstream. There it is right there, heading into Minnesota, Wisconsin. There's that strong upper air lift. And behind it, there's the convergent left rear quadrant. So that's subsidence in the wake of that wave, which is probably in here somewhere. And we can see Lorena down to the southwest. That's mostly a barotropic system. So this chart is really not all that important for that, but it may transition into a baroclinic structure as it moves into the central U.S. And maybe we're seeing a bit of that right there. And of course, our attention then shifts into the western U.S. A couple waves moving through. This one around the 10th of September. This could bring some rain to parts of California. Of course, that depends on the amount of moisture. But the main trajectory is going to be northeastward into the northern plains. A little bit of a blocking ridge right there across Texas. Just a very quick look at the weather around the country. Mildly warm conditions across the northeastern U.S. Right around 80 this afternoon, just about everywhere, even up to Maine. 70s in the mountains, and we do pick up mid-80s in the Ohio River Valley. Louisville up to 85, and Paducah expecting 86. It is mildly warm as well across the southeastern U.S. Lots of 80s, but we do find 90s from Miami to Tampa, 90s from Memphis to Shreveport, and down to Lake Charles. A pleasant 83 for Atlanta and 86 for Nashville. The southern plains is drying out a bit as that boundary sinks into the lower Rio Grande Valley. There are some showers down in that area. However, elsewhere, kind of a prevailing northerly flow, some showers across eastern Oklahoma. Temperatures warm, up to 91 at Houston, 88 at DFW, and 95 at San Antonio. A little bit cooler up in Oklahoma as that modified polar air is still in place. 80 degrees at Oklahoma City and 87 at Little Rock. In the northern plains, a highly baroclinic weather regime. In fact, we got a bit of severe weather. Let me show you the SPC outlooks. SPC Day 1 outlook showing a marginal risk from Minneapolis, Duluth, all the way across Sioux Falls and over to almost Pierre. Some showers and storms going up along this front coming out of Canada, and in other areas, I think we have a west, southwest, east, southeast boundary through here. A few showers developing along that as well. The primary hazards are an isolated risk of large hail and high wind. These are mostly going to be multi-cell clusters due to limited bulk shears. In the southwestern U.S., hot weather continues. 83 at Denver, 90s west of the Divide, upper 80s in the Four Corners area, and of course numerous showers and storms. Southeastern Arizona getting a break, however, as you move out west of Tucson towards Ajo, numerous showers and storms in the lower deserts, almost to Yuma and another area out there in the Mojave Desert. As we mentioned, flood watches across all of eastern California, the Interstate 40 corridor, all the way up to Mono Lake and Walker Lake. Let's take a closer look at these showers. So we start out around 29 Palms, some pretty good precipitation out there through the deserts, all the way up to Death Valley. Looks a little bit more like Virga. And we picked that up with the Reno radar. Numerous showers and storms coming off of the Sierras and moving into parts of Nevada this afternoon. We did have a severe thunderstorm warning earlier around Truckee, specifically around Sugar Bowl Ski Resort. They were looking for some gusty winds and $half sized hail. Heat advisories continue today for all of Southern California, San Diego, Los Angeles, except for the beaches, downtown LA in that heat advisory all the way up to the San Fernando Valley and into eastern San Luis Obispo County. Temperatures will be up into the 90s. The heat advisories in the San Joaquin Valley have been dropped. Red flag warnings continue further north in the Siskiyous and Mount Shasta region for Wednesday due to extensive forecast lightning activity. And we've got heat problems as well in the Pacific Northwest, especially in the lower Columbia River Basin. We've got extreme heat warnings in effect for Pendleton, for the Dalles, Yakima, and Pasco. Temperatures will be up into the lower 100s. That heat will continue all the way through Thursday. Fortunately, a little bit cooler around Seattle. They've got temperatures in the 70s, but you go south to Portland and they do have 90s this afternoon. And we head west into the Pacific and into Alaska. This is part of that cutoff high. Temperatures don't look too bad there in southeastern Alaska today, but they are looking for temperatures near 80 for tomorrow. Flood watch is in effect for the Kenai Peninsula around Soldotna and Kenai due to flooding from the Ski-Lac Glacier dammed lake release. Rivers around Soldotna and Kenai may reach moderate flood stage. Flood watches continue across the southwestern Brooks Range. Let me bring that a little bit closer. Right in here down to around the Koyukuk Wildlife Refuge. That's through Wednesday morning. Another inch of rainfall possible. That's due to that persistent southerly flow. In Canada, heat warnings continue through late week from Terrace to Bella Coola down towards Lytton, where it's 91 degrees right now, over to Kamloops and further south towards the Fraser Canyon, South Thompson, and Boundary area. Temperatures will be up to 85 in the northern periphery and 95 further south. Large area of wildfire smoke warnings from the Northwest Territories all the way through Alberta, parts of eastern British Columbia, and western Saskatchewan. So, yeah, that wildfire smoke issue is back. No problems for eastern Canada. A lot of warm weather across Quebec, and just one little isolated pocket of smoke warnings around Digby, Nova Scotia. That's due to the Long Lake wildfire in Annapolis County. Let's take a look at the forecast highs. This is from the National Digital Forecast Database. So this is not model data. This is the forecast from each Weather Service office. So today, quite hot in the western U.S., but for tomorrow, look in the northern plains. Much colder, 50s and 60s heading south. And that will continue spreading into the Great Lakes area, but not really advancing into the deep south or into Texas and Oklahoma much. For Friday, we start to see a reduction of that heat in the western U.S. It does stay warm there in Texas, but we come under the influence of the remnants of Hurricane Lorena. So cooler for the weekend, and then some very pleasant conditions across the country for Monday. For the forecast lows starting for tomorrow morning, there's some of that cold air starting to sink south by Thursday morning. Very cold up there in Minnesota and Wisconsin, down into the 30s in a lot of areas. A little bit of a warm-up for Friday, but some more cold air comes south for Saturday morning into the Dakotas. Some 30s showing up, 40s all the way to Ohio, Missouri, the Kansas City area. And then we start seeing some moderation across the Midwest. 30s continue up to the north for Sunday, and then a lot of that cold air spreads into the eastern Great Lakes and into New York, where we see temperatures in the 40s. And I forgot to analyze the forecast charts, but just bear with me. There's the cold air coming south. That's going to be for later tonight and into tomorrow. So advancing rapidly into Iowa, Wisconsin. And as the effects of peak heating take place, we're going to see a chance for severe weather in eastern Kansas. Emporia, Wichita, Salina, Topeka, and all of the Kansas City area will see a slight risk due to large hail and high winds. Moderate bulk shears and instability will be present, but insufficient SRH for tornado activity. Good chance of rain all across the Great Lakes. Monsoon rains continue in the deserts. There they are. And then for Thursday, cold air continues filtering into the Great Lakes area. The 540 line coming south, along with the 850 millibar zero line, which is near the all-time record for this time of year. Marginal risk for the Appalachians as that front advances. That's going to be mostly for Thursday afternoon right there. And then down in the southwestern U.S., we see the remnants of Lorena approaching from the southwest, crossing the mountains on Friday and emerging into Texas for Saturday and Sunday. And then the extended for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week. Looks like a baroclinic weather system coming together right there in Arkansas for Monday and advancing eastward and behaving more like a typical frontal system. But it does have that moisture field associated with the remnants of Lorena as it moves into the Ohio River Valley. And that will advance into the northeastern U.S. and then clearing for Friday next week. Well, that program ran a little bit longer than I had hoped. I'm trying to keep the program under 15 to 20 minutes. Especially this time of year, there's not really all that much to talk about, so I don't see a need to go into extensive detail. What do you think? Post a comment. What do you think about the program length? Would you rather see it shorter or longer? I cleared off the thank you page to give us a blank slate for September. Your support keeps this program going, and without that, I would have to focus entirely on new book titles and software. And this YouTube program would have to be discontinued due to lack of time. I'm sure some of you don't want that, so your Patreon support is essential. Of course, I want to thank our most recent supporters, Eddie Holmes, Michael Riley, Jeff Lutz, David S., and Nicholas Lifka. And a great thanks to John Hillary and David Rice, who have sent in support. All right, hope you have a great rest of your midweek, and we'll see you back here on Friday. Take care. Bye-bye.